Hi, Charlotte.
Good morning, Rabbi.
How are you?
How are you? I'm
Okay.
good. Good.
I actually had cardiac rehab this morning, and I'm great.
Excellent.
Huh. Everyone's starting to arrive.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Carol. Carol, you just there you
Hi,
are.
Rabbi Ricky. A little bit. Yeah, we just came from the shul.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully she'll get home soon. Okay. Full screen.
Oh, here's Rabbi Zucker.
Torah Tov.
Torah Tovim. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. So I just got on my Google feed that the iconic Tower of David reopens. Jerusalem like you've never seen it before. Hi, Maddie.
Hi.
But you'll get to see it next month.
I hope. Oh,
Well,
yep.
2 months.
Yep. Less than 2 months.
Yep. Of course.
You're
I know
going
they've
there,
been-
and I'm getting Israel here. So
Wait a couple more moments.
okay, I will get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, okay. I like coffee, so I'm always happy to allow someone to get a cup of coffee. So Allison, the girls, and I saw a parade.
Yes, we saw it last month.
Okay, we saw it Tuesday night, and Bonnie and Bernie were there, and Martin and
Melanie.
were there. So we were
Nice.
all in the same area, so I think it was reserved for Or Hadash.
You know, when
What did
we
you
went
think of
to,
it?
what did I think of it? You know, it's depressing.
Yep.
But I liked it. Stephen doesn't like depressing, so he wasn't that, thrilled with it. But their voices were amazing, and I had read the whole background before we went, so I kind of knew what was going to happen. But when we went to see Leopoldstadt, I think it was Bonnie and Bernie. They walked in, and she was sitting right next to me. I think Bernie was there. Stephen doesn't remember Bernie being there. He thought she was with someone else, but I thought they were both there. But I thought that was funny, that you
That
go
is
to
funny.
a show with hundreds of other people and
Well, one of my friends, one of my dear friends, was saying, "I'm sorry, I haven't been in touch with you for a while, but I wanted to check in. I've got a few moments. I'm on the train on my way in to see Leopoldstadt." And I said, "Funny, we're on the bus on the way in to see Parade." So we didn't see each other, but
so when you take the bus, you go into Port Authority
yep.
and then you get a cab or you just walk?
No, we just walk.
You just walk.
We found Allison found a restaurant around there that was good, and we were fine.
Good.
So here's Ricky. I think we'll get started. Let me start sharing the screen. Hi, Ricky.
I made it.
Yep.
We were in the kitchen this morning preparing for Saturday.
Yeah, Carol mentioned that, and that's what where I figured you would be. Okay, so we are for the moment. Let me oh wait, never mind. I've got it here on the okay, a little bit better in terms of size, I think. So there's every parasha is always filled with a lot. Certainly one of the elements of this parasha, I mean, the parasha itself focuses very much on the failed scouting attempt into Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't so much a failed attempt, it's that, as we know, 10 of the spies brought back a negative report. The report of the land was wonderful. The negative report was regarding their ability to conquer the land, and there is no faith, and only Kalev and Yehoshua had the faith, but it's not enough to save the people, and that generation is condemned to die in the wilderness. There are a number of various laws that are also presented in the parasha, including the famous one that we looked at. Excuse me, one moment. Oh, okay. Including the famous one we looked at, I think, last year, the Mekoshesh Eitzim, the person who was gathering wood on Shabbat, one of those unusual cases, like the Benot Slavchad, the example of the blasphemer that we read a couple of weeks ago, these unusual elements, legal elements. But at the very end of our parasha, we have a section that is very, very famous, and that is, of course, the section that talks about the mitzvah of tzitzit, and that becomes the third paragraph of the Shema in our daily recitation. And so we're going to take a look in particular at one element of the tzitzit, an element that we today may not think about. So who would like to read the translation, or you can read the Hebrew too, for the biblical text? That's
can
right
read
here at the
it.
top. Okay, thanks, Ricky.
Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of Hashem and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful ways. Thus, you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God.
Okay, so first of all, what is the purpose of the tzitzit?
The reminder.
Remind
A reminder of what?
the
Hashem.
commandments.
Commandments.
And
Right.
the command.
Yeah, remind us of all of the mitzvot. And what is the element of the tzitzit that stands out here, but we rarely see in our tzitzit today?
The cord of
The
blue.
blue,
Right,
the blue.
the patil techelet. Now, techelet, we can argue whether or not we know what color that is. We'll look at some sources later on. But techelet is not unknown. That shade of blue is not unknown in the Torah. So just taking a look at one section of the Tanakh where it appears, and that is in the instructions for the Mishkan. Ricky, go on.
As for the Mishkan, make it of 10 strips of cloth. Make these of fine twisted linen of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns with a design of cherubim worked into them.
Right, Kruvim, we talked about that those are the most likely winged bulls or winged human beings, these hybrid critters that were on the different parts of the Mishkan, including on the Kaporet, the top of the Aron that held the Luchot. Okay, and then going on, we're just going to look at a couple of the verses where this appears.
Make loops of tchelet wool on the edge of the outermost cloth of the one set, and do likewise on the edge of the outermost cloth of the other set.
Keep going.
You shall make a screen of for the entrance of the tent of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns, and fine twisted linen done in embroidery.
Okay, so tchelet is many parts of the hangings of the Mishkan. Now we move on. Go on.
They shall make the ephod of gold of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns, and a fine twisted linen worked into designs.
Okay, what is the ephod? Not that anyone
It's the
really knows.
breastplate.
Right, a breastplate for the,
Tribes.
no, well, it
No,
contained the
the-
tribe.
the Torah, for the Kohen.
Right, held the Urim and Tumim. It was for the Kohen Gadol.
Oh.
And going on, and the description of the garments of the Kohen Gadol.
And the decorated band that is upon it shall be made like it, of one piece with it, of gold, of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen.
And then going on,
You
with
shall make a breastplate of decision worked into a design. Make it in the style of the ephod. Make it of gold, of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen.
by the way, the ephod, actually, I should correct everyone, it's probably not the breastplate. It's much more of an apron or a waistcoat type of garment. Not entirely clear, but among the things, there is a Choshen Mishpat, the breastplate of decision. That's probably what held the Urim and Tumim. And what holds this breastplate of decision, the Choshen Mishpat? What holds it? Go
The
ahead.
tchelet cord. The
Right.
breastplate shall be held in place by a cord of tchelet from its rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breastpiece rests on the decorated band and does not come loose from the ephod.
Okay, so not only do we have techelet, the color, but we have the specific language patil techelet. And going on,
You shall make
the robe. Yeah, let's go on the hem, on its hem.
On its hem, make pomegranates of tchelet, purple and crimson yarns, all around the hem, with bells of gold between them all around.
Yeah, the bell bottoms of the Kohanim, and then finally the tzitz, the headband that has Kadosh Ladonai written on it, that the Kohen Gadol wears probably below his turban. Go on, suspend it.
Suspend it on a cord of tchelet so that it may remain on the headdress. It shall remain on the front of the headdress.
Okay, so here too, we've got the word or phrase patil techelet, a thread, a cord of techelet. So looking at all of the appearances of techelet in the Mishkan, in the garments of the holy, of the Kohen Gadol, what would you say about the significance of techelet?
It's up there.
Yeah, this is clearly a very important color. And it's a color of holiness. And also, as Milgram has pointed out, and the rabbis point out, techelet, as you can see here, is wool. And wool is a garment in the ancient world that was able to accept a dye. So, but if you're tying techelet onto these other things, in particular, the linen garments of the priests, you've got wool and linen together. Shatnez.
That's a no-no.
Yeah,
Well, for
that's a
them, it
no-no.
was, for us, but for them, it was
Right.
fine.
And really, it was a sense that shatnez, we may not fully understand the mitzvah. I think Milgram is correct in saying that it's a holy mixture. It wasn't allowed to be worn on a regular basis by normal Israelites because, in fact, it was used for the Kohen Gadol, for the Mishkan. It's a holy mixture, except normal Israelites were all commanded to wear tzitzit. They're all commanded to wear tzitzit, which would have been woolen. They can wear woolen tzitzit with something that's linen. And as Milgram has pointed out, this is one element in which, this color and this particular wool, which may be combined with linen, this holy color, this holy mixture, worn by all Israel, is seen to be an example of the holiness inherent in each Israelite, that there's a little bit of the holiness of the Mishkan, of the Kohen Gadol in every Israelite. But now we're going to take a look at just a couple sources in the Bible on why would Techelet be one of the colors chosen. I mean, there's also Techelet and Argamand and Tolad Shani, so there's purple, red, and you've got a few colors. Why does Techelet stand out so much? And here we see, actually, we turn to Megillat Esther, where it appears a couple of times. Go ahead, Ricky.
There were hangings of white cotton and tchelet wool, caught up like cords of fine linen and purple wool to silver rods and alabaster columns. And there were couches of gold and silver on a pavement of marble, alabaster, mother of pearl, and mosaic.
Anybody remember where this description comes from?
The description of Ahasuerus's palace.
Yeah, exactly. So if we associate these colors with Achashverosh and the palace, what else does this color represent?
Royalty.
Yes, and if you missed that, you can go a little bit later in the book. Go ahead, Ricky.
Mordecai left the king's presence in royal robes of tchelet and white, with magnificent crown of gold and a mantle of fine linen and purple wool. And the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries.
Yeah, and of course, that is when what had happened?
When the
They hung
tables were
Haman.
turned on Haman, and Mordecai is led around the city on the royal horse.
Right. So, this is here, it's very clearly royal garments. So again, for every Israelite to wear a ptil techelet in his or her tzitzit, there is an element of both kedusha and malchut, of royalty. So that's part of the symbolism behind the tzitzit. And we've learned that before. But now let's take a look, more. What does our tradition say about techelet? So we go now to the Mishnah. Who would like to read?
I'll read.
Go ahead,
Wait,
Matt.
sorry, Maddie? Okay, go ahead.
From when does one recite Shema in the morning? From when a person can distinguish between techelet
Techelet.
and white. Techelet. Rabbi Eliezer says from when one can distinguish between techelet and leek green.
Yeah, so in the first Mishnah, the whole collection, that's the Mishnah, opens with the question, Me'imatai korin et Shema b'arvit? From what time do we say the Shema in the evening? Kind of a remarkable document because,
Morning.
from where does one know that one has to say the Shema? What is the Shema? The Mishnah is a fascinating document. Anyway, they ask the question, from what time can you say it in the evening? And now they ask it, from what time can you say it in the morning? Now, and we have two answers. The Tanakama, the first teacher, who's anonymous here, from when a person can distinguish between techelet and white. Rabbi Eliezer says when you can distinguish between techelet and karti, which is obviously this type of green. So first of all, why do you think we have that distinction? Why is that a time that would be an appropriate time to begin saying the Shema?
There's enough light that you can see the difference.
Right. And here we may assume that the techelet is a kind of a light blue, in that if it's something that can be confused with white or light green. So, and this is a mistake here. It should be Bavli Brachot. All right, so now let's take a look and see what the Gemara, what the Talmud has to say about this comment in the Mishnah. So I say the Gemara, my bein tchelet lavan, ilema bein gvava da amra chivara, the gvava da amra de tchelta, abelel yanami medayadi, ella bein tchelet shaba lavan shaba, and we'll here's the translation. Go ahead, Maddie.
Gemara, to what is between tehelet and white referring? If you say that it means distinguishing between a pile of white wool and a pile of tehelet wool, wouldn't one know the difference at night as well? Rather, it must be between tehelet strings in the tzitzit and the white strings in tzitzit.
Right. So basically, the Gemara's answer is kind of a practical answer. You know, it's not just distinguishing between these colors, but specifically, if you say bein techelet levein lavan, well, that's supposed to be what's in the tzitzit. So you have to, when you put on your tzitzit in the morning, you have to be able to see distinction between the blue thread and the white threads. You know, very practical. It's not like you have to go running around looking for different colors, but right here, when you put it on, when you can distinguish it, okay, from then on, it's possible to recite Shema.
All right.
So that's you know, one explanation of techelet. And let's see how first of all, how some of the how Rashi interprets it. Go ahead. He's commenting on the Gemara.
Between the tehelet strings in the tzitzit and the white strings in tzitzit, the shearing of the wool that was dyed tehelet, but there are places where the color did not take well.
Yeah, so if it didn't take well, what color would the strings be?
White.
White, yeah. So it's like, you know, when you're talking about the, you know, Rashi is just specifying that it's really, you're looking at the techelet piece itself, not just the white strings and the blue string of the tzitzit, but actually the blue strings themselves. You have to be able to see where the color took and where it didn't. It's kind of interesting.
But what is the dyeing made out of? Does it say?
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Okay.
Okay, and now we'll take a look at Tosafot. These were the students of Rashi, grandchildren of Rashi, and they comment on both the Gemara and on Rashi. Keep going, Maddie. Oh, sorry, she's on the phone. Somebody else continue. Oh, you're back?
Yes, I'm sorry. Jessica and I are doing an unveiling for my mother-in-law on Sunday, and she's got all these questions for me. I told her text me instead.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can certainly call me, and I even have a pamphlet that I've prepared.
Oh,
for
no,
people
it's
who
not
want to
about
do it.
that. It's the food.
Oh, okay, never mind. That's
3 pounds of salmon, 5 pounds of salmon, you know.
I can't help with that.
I know.
I mean, I
Me
can,
either.
but it's
Rather, it must be between the tehelet strings in the tzitzit and the white strings in the tzitzit.
okay. That's the
Right.
line the Gemara they're commenting on, And Tosafot say,
Rashi's explanation, the wool that was dyed techelet, but there were places where the color did not take well.
yeah,
But
so
this is,
they're just referring to Rashi's commentary.
but this
But
is
now they're going to
difficult.
they're going to comment on Rashi's commentary, sorry.
But this is difficult, for we say in Menachot,
Menachot, that's another part of the
Menachot.
Gemara.
Look in this mitzvah, there is another mitzvah that depends on it. And which is it? The recitation of Shema, as we have learned, until one can distinguish between techelet and white.
Yeah,
If it
so
is-
you can't begin saying the Shema in the morning until you can make the distinction. So the recitation of the Shema is in fact dependent on this other mitzvah. You're supposed to have the techelet, you have to be able to distinguish, the difference between blue and white, but it's more than that. The recitation of the Shema depends on when you can make that distinction. So they're bringing up this text from the Gemara in Menachot, raising a question about Rashi's comment. Go on.
If it
Go
is
ahead.
because of dyeing the wool, the mitzvah of reciting Shema is not dependent on the tzitzit. Moreover, even at night, there are times when we can see that wool is not dyed properly. Therefore, we must explain that it is between the techelet that is in the tzitzit, in which the techelet is set. In addition, 2 strings of white from which we make a link of techelet and a link of white.
Yeah, at some point the strings are tied together. So it's not just that, you take the end of the tzitzit and you can see the different colors. It's like when they're tied together, that it's really in the knots that you can see you can make the distinction. When it would be even harder than in, a plain string. Everybody get that? So it's just, to see how Rashi understands it and how Tosafot kind of clarify Rashi's explanation. Don't totally agree with it. Okay. Now, we're going to go on to Bavli Menachot, where they talk about tzitzit. And actually, I didn't have a chance to put this into the text, but I want to share with you the Talmud. We could look at that. Let's see. Yeah, where they start giving Menachot also talks about tefillin here, but we're going to see in the Gemara where they talk about where the dye comes from. That was, I think, your question earlier, Carol? Yeah. Okay, so would you like to continue here? Now, the stuff in, just so you know, the English that's in the dark, those are the actual words of the Gemara, and then the light color is kind of their explanation. They're adding words to try and explain the passage. Okay, go ahead.
Abaye said to Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, "How do you dye this sky blue wool to be used for ritual fringes?" Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda said to Abaye, "We bring blood of a chilazon and various herbs and put them in a pot and boil them. And then we take a bit of the resulting dye in an eggshell and test it by using it to dye a wad of wool to see if it has attained the desired hue. And then we throw away that eggshell and its contents and burn the wad of wool."
So we get a little bit into, the technology of how they did things.
So
But
we don't know what a chilazon is.
right.
It's
We'll
thought to be a seer.
we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Okay, go on.
The Gemara comments, "Learn from this statement 3 halachot. Learn from it that wool that was dyed for the purpose of testing the dye and not for use as ritual fringes is unfit for ritual fringes.
Yeah, so the test, like when we have cleaners and other things and, test a hidden spot to see, how it works on your carpet, on your clothing, on your furniture, but so the testing color that you can't use for the ritual fringes, nor can you use the wool. Go on.
Consequently, one burns the wad of wool so that no one will use it for ritual fringes, and learn from it that we require dyeing for the sake of the mitzvah, and learn from it that using dye for testing renders all the dye in that vessel unfit. Therefore, some of the dye is removed from the pot before it is tested.
Yeah, so why not just dip the wool directly into the pot where you're making this stuff? It's because the dye has to be l'shem mitzvah. It's really for the sake of the mitzvah. Anything that's used not for the sake of mitzvah is not fitting for ritual use. So an interesting bit that this is so holy or sacred in such a way that, it's got to be specific. And there are many things in halacha that, have got to be specific. We've talked about, when you can build a sukkah and why you can't build a sukkah too far ahead of the holiday, that things have to be done l'shem mitzvah, for the sake of the mitzvah of the holiday, for this holiday, not, that's why we generally get new stuff for Pesach. Okay.
Go on.
Okay, yeah, go on.
The Gemara challenges. The halacha that wool dyed for the purpose of testing the dye is unfit is the same as the requirement of dyeing for the sake of the mitzvah. It is only because the sky blue strings must be dyed for the sake of the mitzvah that wool dyed as a test is unfit for use as ritual fringes. So why are these stated as two halachot? Rav Ashi said, the statement about learning 3 halachot employs the style known as what is the reason? And it means, what is the reason that wool that was dyed for the purpose of testing is unfit? It is because we require dyeing for the sake of the mitzvah.
Yeah, so they're really just trying to get into their methodology. Like, couldn't you have just said, this is one mitzvah that, you've got to, the dyeing process and all the things that you use are necessary for the mitzvah. So, but you have to make clear that it's unfit because the dyeing itself has to literally be for l'shem mitzvah. Okay, and then they also talk about the well, actually we can go on a little bit further.
The Gemara notes that the halacha that using the dye for testing renders all the dye in the pot unfit is subject to a dispute between Tanaim, as it is taught in the Braita.
Again, Tanaim are the early rabbinic teachers. They were the teachers that are included in the Mishnah and the Tosefta, as opposed to the later scholars of the Gemara, who are the Amoraim.
Right. But didn't they just say in the paragraph before that before testing, they removed some of the dye so that I guess it wouldn't be unfit?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why they removed some of the dye.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you break an egg into a separate glass
Right.
or a separate bowl
Changes blood.
before you mix it into everything else.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Where are we? And you shall make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue.
Well, actually start Tchelet dye.
Oh, Techela, where are we? Techela dye that was used for testing is unfit, as it is stated concerning the priestly vestments. And you shall make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue, which indicates that the dye must be used exclusively for this purpose. That is, this must be the first item it is being used to dye. This is the statement of Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel.
Okay, so that's a little bit on the techelet, how they make it, what are the mitzvot associated with it. And right now we know that it comes from the blood of the chilazon.
What's the chilazon?
What is that?
Well, let's go on. Well, actually, let's read a little bit more here in the Gemara, sorry. The sages taught in a baraita. A baraita is an early rabbinic teaching, like from the period of the Mishnah.
There is no reliable method of testing sky blue wool, and therefore it may be purchased only from an expert. There is a method of testing phylacteries to ensure they were written properly, but nevertheless, they may be purchased only from an expert. There is a method of testing Torah scrolls and mezuzot, and they may be purchased from anyone.
It's kind of interesting because today, all of these we would buy from an expert. Go on.
The Gemara asks, and is there no method for testing sky blue wool? But didn't Rav Yitzchak, son of Rav Yehuda, test it to ensure it was dyed with tchelet? The Gemara provides a mnemonic for the test, which was carried out with items whose names contain the letters Gimel, Shin, or Mem.
Now we have to remember that the Gemara is transmitted for the most of the Mishnah, certainly, and the Gemara as well is transmitted mostly by word of mouth. Most of these texts are start out as oral productions. And so there, within the Gemara many times, mentions of mnemonics, ways that they could remember the argument that was coming up. Go ahead.
He would bring alum clay, magavia gila, and
so it
water
begins with a mem.
And water of fenugreek, shavlita, and urine.
Shin.
Mei raglayim.
Yeah. Apparently they used, so they would bring all this stuff that go on.
That was 40 days old. Was that? Oh. He would
Yeah,
soak.
all that stuff that was 40 days old.
He would soak the sky blue wool in this solution from night until morning. If its color would fade, the sky blue wool was determined to be unfit, as it was not dyed with tuchelet derived from a chilazon. If its color would not fade, the sky blue wool was determined to be fit.
So, it's only you have to use the blood of the chilazon. That's the real source, because the other stuff just doesn't work. It's not the same.
But what's the chilazon?
Well,
What's the chilazon?
We'll get there. Okay, and then they talk about the I think that's instead of getting more into the whole system, let's get back to our text.
Charlotte might read.
Yeah, so who would like to read here? You now can see the text we were studying from.
Oh,
It's no longer the so now this is looking at some of the sections in the Bavli in Menachot. This is some sections that come later after the discussion of, how do you test it, et cetera, et cetera. So who would like to read? It is taught that.
I'll read, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte.
It is taught that Rabbi Meir would say, what is different about techelet from all other types of colors? It is because techelet is similar in its color to the sea, and the sea is similar to the sky, and the sky is similar to the throne of glory, as it is stated. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet the like of a paved work of sapphire stone, and the like of the very heaven for clearness.
Okay,
And
so
this-
how do go on?
And it is written the likeness of a throne as the appearance of a sapphire stone.
Okay, so the sky, all these colors are similar to each other, They say the sky is similar to the throne of glory, as it is stated. And this is back when the elders of Israel come up with Moshe and Aharon and have a meal together with God after the giving of the Ten Commandments and the laws. And it says, they were not harmed. They looked up, and this is what they saw. They saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet the like of a paved work of sapphire stone, the very like of heaven for clearness. And then, in Ezekiel, has the vision of God's chariot, particularly in the first chapter. Here too, as he's looking at the throne, he doesn't actually, he sees only something that looks like the image of a human sitting atop this unusual chariot, and the throne on which he's sitting seems to be of sapphire stone. So it's this kind of bright blue or sky blue. And I should point out that the Tosafot actually bring in a textual correction, because this teaching appears in a couple of places in rabbinic literature, and some of them have a slightly different version. So down here, the Tosafot offer a textual correction. Can you
So we read, sky is similar to sapphire, for
Mhm.
so it is written in scripture. And so we read in chapter covering the blood, not as in the books that read, sky is similar to the throne of glory. This is the text in Chulin, but in Sota, the text follows that of Menachoth.
Yeah, so basically, Tosafot is looking at other places in the Gemara, and they say, this other version is correct. It doesn't say, and in the chapter covering the blood, that's just the name of the chapter. Chulin mostly deals with laws of kashrut and slaughter. So they disagree with this reading. The sky is similar to the throne of glory. The sky should be, and it should be that the sky is similar to sapphire. And indeed, in Sota and Menachot, this teaching appears according to their correction. But here in Chulin, the text reads differently. Anyway, even our earlier commentators dealt in textual commentary. They looked at different versions of the Talmud to try and figure out what was being, what was the correct text. And now finally, without really, sorry, go ahead.
The sages taught this zone, its body resembles the sea. Its form resembles that of a fish. It emerges once in 70 years, and with its blood, one dyes wool, sky blue, for ritual fringes. It is scarce, and therefore it is expensive.
Yeah. So, here they don't really explain what the chila zone is, but it's not necessarily fanciful.
It's the creature from the depths of the ocean, of the water.
Right, exactly. And
creature.
now we take a look at some of our modern mefarshim and how it's understood. Okay, this is from Asarna's commentary on Exodus. Mm-hmm.
In the Bible, Hebrew techelet is frequently paired with Hebrew argamon, purple, both being dyes produced from the murex, a marine snail termed hilazon in rabbinic tradition. This creature exudes a yellow fluid that becomes a dye in the red-purple range when exposed to sunlight. The desired shade was obtained by varying the species of murex and by adding other ingredients. Techelet was probably closer to a violet tint, while argamon had a more reddish hue. The Phoenician coast was famous for its dyeing industry. Immense quantities of marine snail shells dating to the 15th century BCE have been found at Ugarit. Modern attempts to reconstruct the process have shown that it required thousands of snails to produce sufficient dye for one robe. This, together with the intensity of the labor and the superiority of the dye's richness and stability, made the products very costly. Hence, possession of tequila dyed or agamon dyed fabrics were marks of wealth, nobility, and royalty. Now, I want to ask you a question. They talk
Mhm.
about snails. Snail is not kosher, so why would they have
Right.
why
You're
would
not
they use
eating it.
something-
You're not exactly, you're not eating it.
Yeah, but my understanding, and I don't have that much knowledge about all of this, is that anything related to non-kosher somethings, we don't put near our body or
No,
touch it. No,
that's
I'm
not
wrong.
completely true.
Obviously.
Do you think of the covering of the ark? It's taha,
Yeah.
some type of animal, but it was not, and in fact, it's, the Meforshim understand it as a seal skin. Well, seal is not kosher.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
this
no,
was
but
the cover of the
there,
ark.
and
Well,
certainly,
you fellows know much more about all of this
Yeah.
than I do.
and
I'm
also,
not
by the way,
knowledgeable.
when someone gets a valve replacement, if it's a pig's valve, okay,
Oh, yeah.
so
Huh.
it's but there
It's a
are
problem.
other cases. Well, I mean, leather
Yeah, we wear leather.
comes from a kosher animal, but it doesn't mean the animal was slaughtered in a kosher fashion.
Ah.
So,
Okay.
okay, and
All right,
now,
something to know about.
Mhm.
But if this fish only appears every 70 years, what's a younger generation or in the middle supposed to do? I mean,
Well, that's
saved it?
why they have to be very, very careful why it's so expensive. Now, it's hard to know what, is, they didn't have quite the biological studies that we have today. So, it may have been very rare, but once in 70 years,
Getting an interpretation as to why is it so rare. And remember, they were in Babylonia. They were not on the Lebanese coast. So all they knew was that it was rare. And so you come up with anything, it appears only once in 70 years.
yeah, and 70 just implies a long time. So-
It's hard to get it is the bottom line.
Yeah. And now we have another contemporary Parshan, Jacob Milgram. He's commenting on our parasha. Go ahead.
Rather violet or blue-purple, the sign of royalty. The violet or blue-purple dye was extracted from the gland of the Murex trunculus snail found in shallow waters off the coast of northern Israel and Lebanon. Since it has been shown that 12,000 snails yield only 1.4 grams of dye, it can be readily understood why only royalty could afford it, and
Yeah,
hence the
so-
term royal blue or purple.
And because of that, sorry, Jacob Milgram explains.
Tzitzit have undergone many changes in Jewish practice, and a brief review of their history is indicated. The requirement of the violet cord was suspended in rabbinic times. The Jewish community followed the 2 Roman wars, was so impoverished that many could not afford even the one violet dyed cord required for each tzitzit. Moreover, the dye industry apparently declined and the kellet became scarce. To be sure, a cheap counterfeit violet had been developed from the indigo plant, but the rabbis disqualified it as tekelet. These factors contributed to the suspension of the violet cord requirement, and since then, tzitzit have been totally white.
Yeah. So, for most of us when we grew up, all we ever saw was white tzitzit. And in fact, today, most of the tzitzit that you see are white. But there has been an increasing number of people with blue who have a Ptil Techelet in their tzitzit. At one point, that was really unusual. And pun intended, you look at somebody with blue in their tzitzit as belonging to a fringe group.
Very funny.
But suddenly we're seeing more people with blue in their tzitzit. And Rabbi Mark Wolf, in one of his writings from the Torah from JTS, talks about this. So go ahead.
The
Charlotte?
resurgence of tying tzitzit with tehillit is a result of claims of discovery of the original source of the tehillit dye that gives the blue fringe its color. Around the close of the Babylonian Talmud, 700 CE, the specific identity of the species of mollusk that produces the tehillit, known in rabbinic literature as the chilazone, was lost. After immersing himself in biology and chemistry, Rabbi Gershon Henoch Leiner, known as the Rodziner Rebbe, went on a discovery mission in the 1880s, I guess. Yeah. He found that the cuttlefish produced a substance that withstood the tests the Talmud dictates for verifying tehillit dye. And he was followed by a chief rabbi of Israel and most recently by a foundation of scientists
That should be who?
who all claim to have discovered different species responsible for tehillit.
Also, the late chief rabbi of the British Empire, Yakubovitz,
Oh. I didn't
Emmanuel
know that.
Yakubovitz. In fact, he wrote about it, and he did his own individual research. If you have time, I'll throw in a very quick archaeological note.
Yeah, plenty of time.
In the discoveries in the early 1960s from Nachal Hever, the Judean desert discoveries by my teacher, Yugal Yadin. In Nachal Hever, they discovered in one of the caves balls of wool dyed, but that was a purple shade. And if you think of the frescoes from Dura Europus, where they show, now that's the 3rd century. They show
better explain what Dura Europus is.
Dura Europus was a fortress on the eastern edge of the Roman Empire on the Euphrates River in modern day Iraq, on the left bank, on the west bank. And the Parthians attacked, and in 256 it fell. But before the attack, the Romans knew that they were going to be attacked, and the synagogue there had frescoes, but they filled it in with earth to reinforce it. It fell anyway, the city fell. Starting in 1938, it was excavated by Yale University, and all these frescoes were discovered. They were removed and placed in the National Museum in Syria, in Damascus. And in 1970, Milgram was able to actually go from Jerusalem via Cyprus to Damascus with the help of the head of the University of California program in Beirut. And so he actually saw them. You can see the frescoes in a volume by Edwin Goodenough, Jewish symbols and art from the Roman period.
Yeah.
I have
there's like a 1 volume. That's actually a 7 volume, or was 7? I don't know.
and
volume
there's a
work,
summary
but
one that you
it's
can see it too.
it's summarized in a 1 volume.
Right. So there, in the digamas, what would be they're wearing togas, but there again, it's a purple color. So there was question between the description of sky blue and purple. When they actually did the tests of mixing this up and see, when they left the lid off of I may have it backwards, I can't remember. When they lit the lid off of the pot, it remained purple, I believe. But if they put a lid on the pot, reducing it, less oxygen coming in, it turned bluish, kind of teal colored. And so that finally made it in the proper range. But it was indeed the halazon mixture. But if it was not reduced, that is, they didn't put a lid on it, it remained purple. If they put a lid on it when cooking it, it turned bluish.
That may also explain why you so often in the Bible have techelet va'argaman. You know, some they may have left the lid on, some they may have left the lid off. And you know,
they may
use
dyed it, pulled it, and pulled it, you know, and then taken it out, you know, and left it out without the dye, or covered with covered with the lid.
Yeah, so
Different color.
yeah, personally, I'm a little skeptical about the techelet that's produced today, though there's a whole website, techelet.com, that can give you the history and talk about all of this stuff. And it's very interesting that it's kind of made a comeback, that the people who are doing it are not necessarily wacko. They're, you know, there's some very serious people, and, you know, I see it, you know, at the seminary, at Ramah, you know, different places, that more people have this thread of blue. And I think it's Rabbi Wolf in his commentary, I mean, is ultimately doing kind of a sermon, not as much an academic discussion, you know, talks about, you know, why this is so powerful, why suddenly has this come back. And he quotes our former chancellor, Arnie Eisen, in Arnie's book, Rethinking Modern Judaism, which is all about ritual and practice in modern Jewish life. He posits that modern ritual is subject to 5 predictors that determine whether a ritual will be embraced or not. These include 1, how the ritual integrates or separates us from the external world. I mean, certainly one role of ritual is to make a distinction between our culture, our tradition, whatever, and the other, which is, you know, true in every religious tradition. He also says whether the message of the ritual inspires its performance, whether the performance of the ritual establishes a real link to our ancestors, whether the practice of the ritual provides enough autonomy for its observer to define ultimate authority, and whether the ritual sinks its roots into the tradition of our ancestors. And for Mark Wolf, yeah, this seems to be doing that. And it's people are finding an emotional connection to this mitzvah. Ricky, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just have a general question about the tzitzit themselves. Are they still only made from wool?
I don't believe so. Most of them are, though, that I can think of. But you know, there's so many different types of talitot now, that you know, people weave their own talitot. They get material and create their own talit, and then but I'm pretty sure most of the tzitzit that you would buy to put onto a talit, I think the overwhelming majority are wool. I'm never really checked that out. I don't think it's polyester for sure, but
that may be one of the reasons why you see that it says a kosher talit. It's not only a question of how to the knots are tied, because there are different traditions on tying knots. Sephardim and Chabad tie differently from Ashkenazim.
So that's a little bit about the Techelet. I think to some extent, we don't really know what it is, for all of the contemporary scholarship and for all the work of Rabbi Gershon Henoch Leiner. I'm not sure we totally know. I think we have a good sense, as archaeology has taught us quite a bit. I personally would not put this new Techelet into my tzitzit, but I have to say I no longer laugh at it. I don't think it's so unusual.
I would be worried of getting something that's produced properly.
Right. You have to use the right eggshells, or So it's a little bit, this Techelet. But again, it comes back to this notion that Techelet is a royal color. It's a special color, hence its use by royalty and by the Mishkan, the Kohen Gadol, because they are supposed to be majestic. But also in terms of the tzitzit, for every Israelite has an element of majesty and an element of kedusha. So
Also,
very powerful.
archaeology, if you want to see those purple balls of wool, Yadin's volume on Bar Kokhba has a popular edition, both in Hebrew and in English, and he has pictures of it in there.
Yeah. He did one on Masada and one on
Right. The Masada
on
one
Bar
won't have
Kokhba.
that, but the one on Bar Kokhba
Right.
does.
Yeah, we have to realize we actually talk about the discoveries in the Judean desert. We have a tendency to focus on Qumran and, of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls. But not all of the Dead Sea Scrolls were from Qumran. There were, certainly things that were found at Masada. And as Rabbi Zucker mentioned at Nachal Chaver, there were other locations
Also,
that,
Wadi Murabat
right.
for the Bar Kokhba, more
Mhm.
Bar Kokhba materials.
Yeah, so that we have like 3 centuries of materials and different objects. They found tefillin at Masada, so there was a lot that discovered, and gives us a little bit more of the picture of late antique Judaism. I don't know what would the title be for that period, but so Shabbat Shalom.
Barach.
Shalom.
Mañana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Take
shalom.
care.
Bye. Thanks.
Oh, yes.
What are you reading? What do you want did I read?
Let me get back to let me just go to Susie's. So Shlach Lecha, Fariba's doing 1, Susie's doing 3, Jody's doing 5.
I was going
You've-
to do 2 and the mafia, but do you need me to do anything else?
Well, why don't you do 7?
2 and 7.
And
Okay.
I'll do 4 and 6.
Good.
Okay. Now,
Good.
I just want to double check. We're honoring you this Shabbat.
Yes, I
Yes.
do.
Okay. Just why, I'm sure, I was sure our
Oh,
presidents told you,
Elena's gonna
but I
come
wanted to.
Finally, Elena's going to come.
Oh, that's wonderful. I have to apologize because Allison's not going to be there. She is leaving probably relatively shortly. She's taking Noah up to camp.
Okay.
Noah's Rosh Hashanah in Canada, and so she's going to take her up. They'll stop in Baltimore,
Binghamton.
No, actually in Buffalo,
Buffalo.
because they're going to go up through Toronto.
Okay,
So they're going to, she's taking, actually, yeah, no, she's taking her all the way up to camp. But then, since it'll be Friday, it'll be getting late on Friday, she's going to Ottawa. And she'll be there for Shabbat, and she'll be coming home Sunday.
okay.
So, but just so
Excuse
you
me,
know, it's not that she's, she's trying to avoid it by any stretch of
I
the
never
imagination.
assumed,
She
but
wants
yeah,
to be
okay.
there, but just as Mindy is away at a family bar mitzvah.
Right, right. We're
So,
all busy.
yeah, just, I don't want, it's June. June is a crazy time for everybody, from the weddings and graduations and stuff like that.
Good. Okay.
So, all right.
2 and 7 and Haftarah.
2 and 7, I do 4 and 6.
Right, good.
That's good. Take
Good.
care.
Okay.
Tell Elena I'll be very happy to see her,
Absolutely.
especially since I missed the last cooking class.
Right.
Take care.
We still haven't heard, but whether we do the cooking class still in June or early July, it's going to be early in the week type of thing. I don't.
Yeah, I'm
have
sorry about the
confirmation.
noise. I left my window open with the fan going,
I
and
don't hear it.
the guy just came to do our lawn.
Okay. So we'll still get something in before Tisha B'Av in preparation
Okay.
for the 3 weeks. Good. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.